I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for joining this session. I'm very happy to see so many people and feel welcome. We're going to have a panel here for about an hour, and then you're going to be able to ask your questions. But if you're here, it's already that you probably understood that when we come on Earth, it's not only to take, but it's also to give and to give back. So we're going to speak about that today. We're going to speak about modern philanthropy. It's a way that combines values, innovation, and potentially returns, financial returns or returns. Philanthropy and impact investing are complementary. They share the same goal, which is basically to address major challenges and to direct capital towards projects that are aiming at solving some of the most important stakes of our world, social, environmental. Today we're going to talk about how the two, impact investing and philanthropy, used to be separated sectors, but are becoming more and more intertwined and are actually working as a duo in order to solve some important stakes on the sustainable length. So we're going to see how they fuel each other and how they can create long-lasting results. And for this, I'm very pleased to be joined by 5 renowned speakers. Thank you for being here. And I will introduce each of them very briefly and ask each of them actually to introduce a bit more themselves and the organization they work for, as well as the link they have with investment, impact investment, and philanthropy. So we're going to start with Christina. Christina, you're the director of the Astorg Philanthropy Investments. It's a fund that is hosted actually at the King Bonden Foundation and sponsored by Astorg, which is a private equity firm.
Yes, so great to be here, and great to see all of you that are interested in this topic. So my name is Christina Spiller. I lead Astorg Philanthropy Investments, which I'll call API in short because it's a very long name. And API was created in 2022 by Astorg, which is a pan-European private equity fund with 23 billion of assets under management, a team of 180 professionals in 6 different countries. And so the partners came together and they wanted to create a way of doing philanthropy that reflected the DNA of the company. So we really wanted to retain some grant making, but move into impact investing. And so we created API as Astorg Venture Philanthropy Arm, again, back in 2022, with a clear focus. And that is to support organizations that are specifically targeting people with disabilities and chronic conditions with the aim to improve health and inclusion outcomes for these beneficiaries. Why healthcare? Because healthcare has been a core investing focus for Astorg since the foundation of the firm in 1998. Why people with disabilities and chronic conditions? Because these conditions affect millions, but yet remain critically underfunded. And so we really want to use the philanthropic capital that we had, the experience that we had, to put it to work where we knew we could make a difference. So we have now, fast forward to now, we have built a platform that's diversified and we think it's quite unique in the market. We use 3 different strategies. So we do direct investments in early stage companies. We do support specialized funds. So we make commitments to funds as an investor. And third, we also do some grant making, but it's a tiny part of everything we do within API. Alongside philanthropic capital, we provide in-kind support to the organization that we support, and this is mainly Astorg access to the Astorg team, access to the Astorg network and expertise that we've built over the years. We are financed by Astorg, so we are financed with a combination of carried interest and management fees from the Astorg funds, which provides a sustainable income for the foundation. And the ambition that we have, which is an ambition for now, is to preserve the capital in the long term and recycle this capital and reinvest it in other impact opportunities.
Thank you very much. So to your neighbor, Alex. Alex, you're a partner, general partner at Norscan Evolve. Prior to that, you were also an entrepreneur and an investor. You worked for the Omedia network and were VP product at a space technology company. And you directed Rewire, a fintech.
You really went deep on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah. So perfect background to speak about what we're going to speak today. Do you want to explain a little bit more what you're doing nowadays?
Happy to. I'm very impressed and surprised to see so many people in the room. Just quick question, like hands up if you would consider yourself an impact investor. All right. Okay, 20%-ish. How many of the people in the room are like would like to be or are curious about it? Would like to do that in the future? Also about 30%. So what are the other 50% doing? Looking to structure programs. Okay, no, good to understand. Currently I'm general partner for Norsken Evolve. So let me talk a little bit about Norsken. It comes out of Sweden. In Swedish, that Norsken actually means Northern Lights. So this was actually a foundation initially set up by one of the founders of Klarna, a wonderful man called Nicholas Edelbert. Klarna, the main product Klarna produced is worth about 5 billion today. As a company, was like buy now, pay later. So short-term consumer financing, right? Like when you're at the electronics store, should you buy this extra thing? And he sort of did that for quite a long time and then was like, why? Why are not the best brains of our time building solutions to some of our biggest problems, right? And so he said, great, I'm going to start a foundation, Norsken Foundation, to create an ecosystem where people can work on those sorts of topics, right? So today, the foundation has these beautiful houses across Europe and actually in Africa. There's one in Stockholm, there's one in Barcelona, there's one in Rwanda, there's actually one in Brussels as well, and one coming in Amsterdam. And so these are ecosystem spaces that are really world-class communities for anyone working on this type of topic, but really focused on the entrepreneur. What support do you need to get going? What the foundation saw pretty quickly is that money was needed to basically invest in a lot of these amazing projects. So now there's a set of 5 funds at Norsken. I run Norsken Evolve, which is a very early stage fund. The foundation is a small LP in the funds, but typically, less than 5%. And then the funds themselves go out and raise capital for the market for their thesis. The funds now have about 700 million euros under management. So this is since 2017. And then last year, me and a small team raised a 60 million euro fund called Norsken Evolve. So we invest in very, very early stage entrepreneurs, focusing on sustainability and resilience topics. So a lot of climate tech. We also look at tech bio and med tech. We will look at, is the data that you're seeing truthful or not? So we're looking for companies that can really build in those areas and be venture financed and return financial returns to the investors in the fund. Now, there's an interesting twist, which is the foundation also owns some of the carry. The carry is basically the profits from the fund. So if the funds do well, in theory, the foundation will have more capital in the future to do more of its enabling activities in the ecosystem, more houses and things like that. So that's sort of what we do. There's a lot going on. I have built companies in this space as well, but I think this room is probably more interested about structuring, how it looks behind the scenes, and how to get really kind of private sector money moving towards problems that we collectively want to solve.
Wonderful, thank you. Very nice. You would like, but Anne-Sophie, your turn. Anne-Sophie, you're the director of Raise SharePass Foundation, and you're all about impact investing. You've been helping to finance and supporting 250 startups and 20 NGOs. And if I'm not mistaken, you're also a laureate of Forbes 40. Can you explain us your role, mission, and the specificity of Raise SharePass Foundation?
Perfect. As you can hear, I'm French, with my accent, of course. And I'm also the director of Raise Sherpa, the foundation of Raise Investment Group. So this group was created 10 years ago. It's an investment platform and also a mission-driven company with a unique model for sharing success. So like my friends, what we do, we all the investment teams donate 50% of their carry interest to my foundation. So thanks to this unique model, we can really finance and support innovative and impact projects that can change the world, I think. And these innovative projects are led by really deep tech impact-driven startups or NGOs dedicated to environmental protection and social inclusion. To give you some figures, every year we deployed 3 million into this ecosystem. And we do that through interest-free loans for startups, but also with grants, 40K grants for our NGO during 3 years. So we have funded and we have supported more than 200 startups and 20 NGO. And what is really important in our model is that we have a strong support with our startups and our NGOs, that we will bring custom programs to them, mentorships, but also a strong connection with potential clients, with potential foundation to help them to find clients and fundings. And one particularity of RAISE is a really powerful network, because we bring together all our stakeholders, so the LPs, the corporates, the VC fund, the foundation, the portfolio companies, the startups, and also the NGO, so we can create value for all of them. And this is really unique, I think, in France.
A lot of value indeed. Steven? So we're joined by Steven Cernel. Steven is the co-founder and chair of Impact Finance Belgium, which is active to actually move impact capital towards more funding in Belgium. But he's also a serial entrepreneur and a serial investor, so he knows what he's talking about. Steven is also the board of different organizations, impact investment funds, foundations, and the global steering group. He's a global steering group board member. Steven, can you explain a bit what your job is? Yeah.
Well, it's exciting to be in such an energetic and international panel. So looking forward to the discussion. And I also would like to thank the King Boudewijn Foundation for setting this topic on the agenda. I think it's a very hot topic. We don't know the silver bullets, but it's moving this entire space of philanthropy and impact investing. So I think it's very timely. And seeing the crowd, there seems to be interest in the topic as well. And that's one of the reasons, I think, why we started Impact Finance Belgium. When I was still active in another space and I came back 3-4 years ago to Belgium, I saw a lot of great initiatives, and many of them in the room and people out there, but there was no go-to place, no kind of face, no voice that was bundling together this movement. And hence we started Impact Finance Belgium. And what we do is 4 things. First of all, there is shaping the market. We need a market builder. Policy and advocacy. We just launched the report, and this is the leaflet you got, so it's very timely. It's on catalytic capital. What's the meaning of catalytic capital, with concrete examples. So that's building the market. We need market builders. Second, we also want to make the topic of impact investing with positive impact for people and planet, more known in the broader space, to the people, to the retail saver, to the institutionals, and so on and so forth. We're a membership organization, hence we connect the different members with each other and make sure that we are not always the blocking point, but that they can talk directly to each other. And lately as well, we launched very active, what we call labs, because in the end, we see our success as how much money we can move into this space. And we have concrete targets that by 2030, 3% of all capital in Belgium should be dedicated to impact and 30% to sustainability. So this is a concrete drive, and hence we have a lab on affordable housing and a lab on regenerative agriculture. But the main tagline for IFB is make sure that impact becomes an equal dimension next to risk and return. And if we get there, in every financial decision, you have that reflection of impact next to risk and return, we're going to go a long way.
Thank you. Powerful, strong mission. Ines, you lead the market development at Impact Europe, the European network for impact investors. You have more than 20 years in the field of finance and impact investing, so you know what you're talking about also. and you're part of the investment committee of Impact Shakers, a very great impact fund, and MPA Capital. You're a long advocate for diversity in private equity, and you work very closely to the Belgian chapter of Level 20. So can you tell us a bit more about Impact Europe in a nutshell, and then we'll go with you on maybe starting with the trends of the topic of today.
Yeah, so Impact Europe, we exist since 20 years. So it used to be named EVPA, European Venture Philanthropy Association. So we are also a network, a European network of investors for impact. We bring together 300 members across 40 countries, from foundations to impact funds, all the way along to institutional investors and to European Commission, EIB and EIF, so the European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund. So our activities lies actually at the crossroads of capital mobilization and also market building. So it's exactly the same kind of activities as IFB. And also lastly about policy shaping. So really bringing the voice of our members, for example, to help policymakers to shape, for example, sustainable financial regulation like SFDR, CSDR, and so forth. And lastly, this year we're working on how to remodel the impact fund structure. So we have a VC model, but it doesn't work always for the impact. And so we are really helping actually policymakers to rethink those structures. So.
Yeah, just to jump on what you're saying, like we hear a lot of noise about impact investing, philanthropy. We live in troubled times, but the GIN edited a report recently, and it shows that impact investing is still growing. Can you give us just a little bit of some elements and some trends for the market?
Yes, I will first begin actually with another figure that is important actually first to know where we are. So it's 800 billion. So what is 800 billion? This is the private capital that we are missing in order to achieve the SDGs. So regarding to that amount that we are missing, what is the impact investing market right now? So the European Impact Investing Consortium pulled a market study 2 years ago. And so what we saw is that the market is growing from 80 billion to 190 billion right now. So it's growing quite well. So the impact investing market is getting more matured. And then when we regard actually the foundations market, we know that now annually there is 76 billion of grants in Europe. So that gives you a little bit of the amount in Europe.
Okay. Well, and I guess we can still do more. It's good, but we can still do more, and we're here to talk about it. So, Steven, that's what you're doing with Impact Finance Belgium. Yeah, I was saying like we live in troubled times, wars, military expenses that are growing, the race for AI, etc. I just want to know what's your opinion on how we make sure that we keep investing in impact, that the money keeps flowing into the market on the long run. And what's the role maybe of the impact investors into that and organizations like yours?
And if I may, I'd like to extend your question a little bit, because philanthropy and impact investing are both powerhouses in and by itself. I mean, there are numerous examples where impact investing cannot go and where philanthropy should go. If you heard Pansy this morning, I mean, it's clear you don't want a market model to help those women over there. It's the same with democracy. It's the same with system building and market building. I mean, there is a huge opportunity and a huge cause to continue philanthropy. The same for impact investing. There are many cases where impact investing is fit for purpose. I'd like to highlight where they combined can do more than each by themselves. And then I come to your question, how can it play a role in this very particular time? The first thing where I've seen many times how they can combine their efforts and their strengths is in a sequential way, where there is a very risky early stage model, like with Fairphone. Some of you might know Fairphone. It's the people in Holland, Bas, that had the idea that the current mobile phone is not very fair in many ways. And this was an initial idea, but too risky, no business model, rather a movement. So he got grants from Stichting Doen in Holland. But later on, it turned out that there was a business model. So they moved from a grant to capital, and they provided capital. So in a sequential way, you can see how philanthropy and impact investing can be sequential. That's the same for Mud Jeans, Tony Chocoloni, and many others. A very nice example in Belgium as well, which is the Mondaiden, which is opening playgrounds for kids with disabilities, where there is a Belgian foundation that first gave a grant, and when the model again was proven, another investor, Feedtrust, came in providing capital. So they can combine their efforts in scaling certain very risky ventures. The second example is where they come in together at the same time. And that's what we call blending structures. And blending structures have the big advantage, and I think you're going to give very nice examples about all of this, but blending structures allow those that give a first loss, what we call a first loss, to scale their impact. And investors, normally they don't go where there is high risk and low return. An investor doesn't go there. But if you say high risk, low return, high impact, you all of a sudden see that the blend of grants, first loss, and capital coming in does a tenfold of what otherwise would be possible. Coming to your question of why does it matter today, you named the figure, how much we need, 800 billion. With everything which is on the table on renewable energies, new models, circular economy, I'm not talking about defense, but resilience, mental health care, also our data and the protection of our data. These are all models where we want to build a sustainable future. And if you realize that for €1 donation, you have a tenfold of sustainable and impact capital and 100-fold of traditional capital, you can clearly see that the combination of this money is needed to solve those huge problems.
Thank you, Steven. I will maybe continue with Anne-Sophie on the topic. Higher risk, lower returns. We speak about catalytic investments also, where mainstream finance is not going. And so, as you just said, Steven, like starting to invest at conditions that other investors wouldn't do otherwise in terms of risk, but also terms and long time patience. So how do you live it actually at Raise Sherpas, and what's the model behind to how do you really implement it?
Yes, I think we are all convinced that we really need to have breakthrough innovations to tackle all the environmental and social issues, but these innovations are really risky, what we said, and they need massive fundings. So I think catalytic investment and philanthropic investment can really go where traditional funding can't, because we can back early stage projects, very risky ones, because we don't have time pressure, we don't have exit pressure, you know, and we can have a long-term approach for this project, and we are not afraid about long-term innovation cycles, you know. So for us, it's really important. That's why we choose to back these early stage startups and this deep tech innovation at Raise Sherpa.
And how did it start? Because like you're coming from like traditional, I would say traditional investment culture. So what's the shift there?
I think it's all about founders, because my company is a private equity company. So they build also long-term relationships with founders in private equity. And then they decided to create this foundation to help entrepreneurs, but young ones, the one who can set up innovative projects and save, I think, the world and the main issues. So we started like this, so we can invest in biotech, in AI for medicine, in new materials, where banks or traditional VC won't go first. And we also bring all the support to our startups so they can be prepared for scaling and for VC fundings. So we are at first, and we take all the risks and after.
Okay. Maybe some kind of question for you, Alex. Coming from the tech world, working with a lot of tech companies, tech for good companies, what's the motivation behind and the mechanisms? Can you explain a little bit the mechanisms behind the funds you're dealing with?
Yeah, happy to. I think, so we're mainly investing in Europe, right? So we actually, in terms of motivations, we try to think about, well, what is going on in Europe and what do we need? So let's start with Europe. We're here in Brussels and kind of the center of Europe. So I think we've had populism is popular again, right? If you look around kind of internationally. So why is that true? I mean, I'm quite reductionist in my thinking, and inflation has been high. People can't necessarily buy houses if you're under 30 in most European capitals around the world. You have this pretty disgruntled feeling around sort of the nation state not necessarily delivering on the promise that it afforded everybody, right? You show up, you go to school, you get a degree, you get a job, and hopefully you can have a nice, meaningful life, right? And so I think the rise of populism is pointing to something, and I think that something is, are we really performing economically? And so, okay, what's happening economically? I think from my knowledge, we reached our industrial peak in 1975. And then we said, great, let's start shipping things out of Europe because that feels more economically efficient. What's happening digitally, right? Okay, so are we winning in terms of digital infrastructure, the latest iteration, that being AI? It's hard to say yes. I think some corners, sure. But if you look at a lot of our technology kind of champions, they've been in financial technology or B2B software. Does that really solve any problems? Not really, right? So our motivations are very much about how do you get the people that really want to build massive, scalable technology companies that can be unashamedly worth billions of dollars working on our core problems. And our core problems are pretty pervasive. So that's sort of where the motivations come from, right? And the core problems go across health, they go across energy, they go across materials, they go across mental health. It's all kind of bundled together. And we don't claim to know what solution is going to win. So we're really looking at teams at the earliest stages that believe they have a technology solution that can be helpful. And then we try to help them as much as possible at those stages, right? Just talking to this blended capital approach, yeah, I want to talk very quickly about kind of Planet. So I lived in San Francisco for 10 years. I was an early employee at a company called Planet Labs. Planet Labs today is worth about 10 billion, right? They started out as 3 NASA PhDs that were building super small spacecraft about the size of this bottle of water. And what did they want to do with those spacecraft? Well, put cameras in them, and take a picture of the entire planet every 24 hours. Imagine if you could click your finger and the world would appear in front of you, and you could spin it and zoom in at any level of resolution and see what's happening. And it's all right, NASA engineers, why do you want to do that? And they're well, imagine if you could see when every tree was chopped down, right? Imagine if you could see when the ship turned off its AIS signal and went dark, because that's where strange stuff happens. Their goal was really to go to space to help life on Earth. NASA as an institution, most of the guys and the women are scientific in nature, and they're really trying to think about the long-term sustainability of humans and the planet. And so the early stages of that company, to the point made earlier, there were grants, right, from philanthropic organizations. There was investment from the IFC, which is kind of the for-profit arm of the World Bank, but looking for impact. There were impact investors, and there were also just pure play VCs involved in that project. So in these early stages, when the technology kind of solution is so outlandish, why could a small group of people launch more than 200 small spacecraft and build a sustainable company out of that? It's not obvious. So actually the combination of these capital sources is super, super powerful. And we're seeing that now in Europe. I'm not going to get into the grant financing side of things, but there is a huge role to play encouraging technology to come out of our storied academic institutions, which are still amongst the best in the world. So how do we get more of these incredible researchers with the expertise and the skill set and the network and these starting capital so they can build solutions that they are looking at, in their research. So that's some of the motivations and some of the ways you can combine capital. But it's been very bespoke today. I haven't really seen that programmatically work anywhere.
And because I think you don't have only Norsken in the capital of your fund. So Norsken is really impact-driven, impact-directed. But what about the other investors? Are they also going into this direction, or is it more difficult?
You mean our investors into the funds?
Into the funds,
in Norsken?
yeah.
So we have a mix. I'll talk about my specific fund. So we have about 50% private capital. From groups like the EIF, and about 50%, 50% public capital and 50% private. The private capital, a lot of it comes from family offices, actually, who are looking at the problems around them and being like, wow, we really need solutions to this. And they are not necessarily looking to put that to work just in standard private markets. They want more than just a financial return. They want to feel like the capital is going towards something like they believe in, ultimately. So we're about 50-50 in terms of public-private financing inside our fund.
Okay, great. Christina, actually, same to you. What you're doing with Astorg is going in the same direction. I'm really interested in knowing how you turn traditional investors into supporters and players into the impact investing and philanthropy scene. And maybe you can explain a little bit more the model, how you involve also the partners and the employees.
Yeah, absolutely. So that, I'd say, it's still work in progress, but we did huge progress since we launched.
It's a mind shift,
exactly.
I guess.
It's a mind shift, and Astorg, it's a for-profit private equity fund, and we're moving completely away to a new world, which is impact investing, still investing in for-profit companies, but these are very early-stage companies. And, the Astorg team looks at billion euros companies, and we're looking at companies that have 10 employees, trying to solve, a critical chronic condition that affects a specific cohort of beneficiaries. So it's a very different mindset. But I have to say that what has been crucial for us is that we have had the complete support of the board of Astorg, and that has been fundamental for this to be successful. We have managed to create a governance body that sits, alongside the board of the foundation. And this is a rotating body that is a combination of investment professionals from Astorg, colleagues from, various teams of Astorg, and we really want them to get exposure to impact investing and exposure to the foundation, because first we think this will benefit their own, their own career, but also we want to make sure that what we are doing makes them proud, right? So we want them to be proud of being an Astorg and proud of what we're trying to do with API. And then thirdly is we really want the team to be involved with the API-related project. And so last year, the whole team, we did a calculation, and we actually spent 450 hours as a team on API-related project, and this was, a fantastic result, because it means that the team is involved, they like what we're trying to do, and they're really benefiting and, relating to what we're doing. We're also running at the same time, we do grant making, it's very small, but we do an annual call for projects where we ask the whole team to select projects and send them to us, and then we ask the team to vote. And last year, again, we had huge participation, so we had 80% of the whole company, of 180 people voting for the projects. And, fantastic success was, year two of this process. So I think it's, we still have a long way, but we are moving towards, where we'd like to be as API.
And would you say it's a transformative aspect? Is the team working for the private equity going to give more or invest more into impact investing? Can you explain a bit the mind shift?
Yeah, so I think the mind shift will sit over the next few years, right? Because education takes time. I think what is really transformative, or, we do have the ambition of being transformative, is with the organizations that we support and the value that the Astorg team and the Astorg network provides. So just to give a few examples, Last year, we ran an AI training that we ran with all our Astor portfolio companies, and we did it pro bono for our small portfolio companies. Again, this is something that small organizations just don't have money to do. And so this is the value that we bring. We ran a 6-week workshop with one of our go-to-market strategies that, again, we use within Astor companies, and he did a whole piece of work for one of our tiny companies. So this is where we think we can be transformative. But again, we launched, almost 4 years ago now. We built the foundation of API, and the next 2 to 3 years will be really focused on execution and demonstrating that we can do what we like to do, which is preserve the capital in the long term and reinvest what we receive through the proceeds of our investment into other impact opportunities and scale, multiply the impact that we have.
Very nice, thank you. Yeah, when we speak about impact investing, actually the returns can be very various, financials or social or environmental. And I want to speak a little bit about the coherence into that, because we speak about investors and we speak about philanthropists, and I want to know a little bit if you're able to do good and do well at the same time. I guess if you want to invest on the long run and have projects that are self-financed or financing other projects at the end, you need to create a positive circle into all that. And so maybe Ines, with the look that you have upon all these organizations that you work with and all these investors that you work with as Impact Europe, I would like to ask you if when you start as an investor to look into philanthropy and impact investing, do you sacrifice returns for performance, let's say?
So I think that we should walk away about that kind of statement because as Stephen mentioned, there is a place for everyone. So philanthropy is super important for certain types of funding. And when we talk about impact investing, there is also a kind of variety. So there is some you cannot achieve market rate returns, and that is okay. It's just like that. But for others, for more mature impact funds, for example, there are some projects for which there is totally possible to combine both. And so that's what is important to understand is that there is really a place for everyone, and that's make the strong asset actually of impact investing is that we need to think about the full continuum of capital. And so there is also place for example, sustainable bonds. And so, yes, so we don't sacrifice specifically.
Okay. Maybe Stephen, what's your view on this?
I think as well, building on what Ines is saying, I think it's a false question. And it's still wandering around and we're still struggling with this question. But I think we gradually get an answer. Mm-hmm. And the answer is that today you can define or at least aspire, not define, but aspire a certain risk-return impact combination a priori. Of course, it's always in the facts whether you realize it or not. But there are a couple of causes where you cannot get double-digit financial returns while creating massive impact. You know it in advance. Campani is here in the room. We're investing in small-scale farming in the Global South. These are very small cooperatives and SMEs where we don't ask any collateral. It's early stage. Well, previously, these were donations. We turned it into an investment model, but we don't promise double digits. We promise inflation reduction or inflation preservation. So we only say you can get a couple of percentages, but it's a conscious decision. The investors know on beforehand that they preserve their capital and get a major return. So it depends on the cause and it depends on the timing. What today is not yet let's say, fully double-digit return fashionable can become so in the future. What with renewable energies? 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we were walking away. There were no investors, at least no traditional investors. Today, it's just a commercial market. So we should be aware that it depends on the cause that you're pursuing and on the timing, the maturity. And then you can pick your battle and see whether you want to have double-digit returns, renewables, whether you want to have single-digit returns, or one you have concessionary capital. It's your choice. And that's the beauty. You're the professionals. Pick your choice and pursue your impact and your return.
And what about the substitution, actually? Like, if you start to, I understand, of course, the combination of the grants, of the investments, etc. But is there a way that we can think also that investment that used to be directed to foundations to do pure philanthropy are now being used in impact investing and renewable grants, etc. And like, is it creating a gap into the philanthropy market?
Of course, you have those, I would say, examples where the one is crowding out the other. But if you go to a blended solution and those people are testimonial to that, it is super important that you're very intentional and clear about the impact you want to create, because the impact, the positive impact for people and planet is the glue that holds the grant giver and the investor together. Because the grant giver is looking for the big capital to scale its impact. To scale its impact. And the investor is there to preserve its capital. And the glue is having this intentional joint impact statement. And if you have that properly done, it depends on the LPs that are in your fund. It depends on how is your theory of change, how you measure and manage your impact. If that's done right, there is a win-win.
And Sophie, do you want to jump on the topic maybe with all the NGOs that you've accompanied also, and explain a little bit, some examples maybe of how you can target philanthropy, impact investing?
Yes, it's what I said before. For example, we invested in a company named Genomics, really at early stage. And Genomics, it's a biotech company using plants to extract critical materials. For example, nickel, and then you can use it in battery for electric vehicles. So it's really moonshot, you know, long-term cycles, innovation, everything. And we were there really at the beginning, and now they raised 40 million round with a VC, US VC. So we are really happy to be part of this journey, you know, because they need us first, and then they can grow with a really traditional investor. And I think it's the good combination sometimes also to have this philanthropic investor and then the traditional ones.
And did you exit, for example, or do you make sure that the mission is still growing?
Yeah, the mission is still growing, and we are still in the company in this one.
Okay.
But I think we will exit. It will be a nice exit, but so we are really happy. And on this part, what we did also is 4 years ago, we decided to create a raise feature. It's the first 100% philanthropic VC fund in the world, I think, because I don't know other model like this. So we have no management fees, no carried. The principle is quite simple. We collect donation from entrepreneurs who believe in the VC system. Then we use this donation to invest in promising startups, like Genomics, I said, or other ones. And at the end, we gave all the proceeds to the NGOs. So the principle is really to use the mechanism of VC to multiply donation for the common good. So it's really unique and innovative, but you can also choose to do a part of it, you know. We are 100% philanthropic, but you could be like only 50% or 10% even, and it's still really nice.
Alex, can I hear from you on this question? Like, is investing the new giving?
Is investing the new giving? Look, what would I say to that? I mean, so back like 15 years ago, I worked at a place called the Omidyar Network, right? So the Omidyar Network was founded by the founder of eBay. It's a little bit similar to Norsken in that that person created like a big internet company and was like, well, how do we move the world forward in ways that have more impact than kind of what he did with eBay and then PayPal? And so we spent about many years defining, well, what is impact? right? Like, what are you trying to achieve? And then it turns out that that is sort of your everything. So I think if you really know what you want to do, or how you want to change the world, or like move the needle to like a slightly better place than where it was in your field, then there are going to be capital solutions, right? And I think venture capital is a super unique, very bizarre capital solution where you expect 90% of the people receiving it to fail miserably, hopefully start again, and you expect one or two, hopefully, to dominate their regional or like global market. That's a weird instrument, right? And like that instrument probably isn't that helpful if you are working on mother's maternal health in a certain part of the world, or if you're working on how do we get 12-year-olds to read books effectively and like keep them off AI, which is designed to keep their attention by asking, would you like me to do your homework for you now? Right? So all these problems are like fundamentally different. And so if you're doing this, well, what are you trying to do? And venture capital, I think, for a very small subset of very important problems can be amazing. But I would start there, like, what is it to you for your sector? And then what financial product makes sense, right? And so then you align that with the people you try to get money from to do that. Or if you're spending your own money, I'd really encourage you to be super clear on, okay, this is the goal. Here's 3 ways of doing it. Maybe we want to bet on these 2. One might be, low interest rate loans. Like another might be pure philanthropic giving, like at the grassroots level. Like another might be something different. So I think impact just hides a massive amount of diversity. And I would really encourage everyone to be just like super clear on like, what is that for us?
Yeah. Maybe Anne-Sophie, there's a lot of innovation into the types of financement, fundings, investments. A short talk about status and legal entities. In France, you have entreprise à mission. We are also more and more talking about steward ownership. As an investor, is it legal entities that you will have a look at, and why?
So Raise, the investment fund, is a mission-driven company. So we have different pillars, and one of them is sharing success. So it's really written that all the companies should give 30% of their carry interest to my foundation. We have also parity, inclusion. So I think it's really important, even in the private sector, in the private equity, to have this kind of mission. And in France, it's quite complicated to have it. And then you have an audit every 2 years. So it's really a commitment for a company. And what you said before, it's also that you can involve all your workers, all your company, your LPs. And it's really a collective project, I think, a collaborative one. So for my company, it was really important.
Okay. Stefan, you want to add a word?
Yeah, I want to stress one thing, and I have to look for Alex, is your name, Alex, which I like very much what you're saying. And this is, for me, the fundamental battle between, let's say, driven by impact and the classical financial space, is that if you start from the challenge, if you start from what you try to achieve and re-engineer back what financial means and what type of instruments you need, then you're well aligned. So you should start from the challenge. Sounds logic. But I quote very often this number that 2/3 of the financial decisions nowadays in the world, they're used to create more finance. So for 2/3 of the world, the purpose of finance is more finance. So we have a big cultural challenge with the big finance that their end goal is more finance, while our end goal is solutions. And that's a huge cultural battle.
Thank you. Christina, I just want to learn a bit more about the collaboration that you have with the Kin Boden Foundation. How did it start? How does it look like? And a little bit a way to wish happy anniversary to the foundation on the great work that they are doing and working with you.
Their anniversary. Yeah. My anniversary.
50, already 50.
I know, 50, yeah. We're 4 in June, so we're still young. No, but I think just connecting to what, the panel was saying on flexibility. So, as the Astor Foundation, we started from the challenge. So we wanted to support people with disabilities and chronic conditions. And then we developed the instruments that we're using. So that's when we developed the strategy. So we have direct investments. Here we do equity, safe, we do convertible loans. We can be very flexible depending on what the company needs. On the specialized impact funds that we support, we've done one traditional VC fund focused on pediatric innovation. This is the first pediatric fund in Europe. Pediatric innovation is extremely underfunded, underserved. There is need of funding, and so as a foundation, that's the natural place for us to be, right? And they'll be focusing on 5 specific chronic conditions that affect pediatric patients. Same in the fund bucket. So we did a very innovative structure. It's actually a French fund. And they do it's a debt fund, so very different. And all the return that we get from these debt investments, as investors, our return is capped to 3%. Anything above that is donated to neuroscience institutions that are advancing research in ALS. So this is extremely innovative. Nobody has ever done that before. ALS, it's an orphan condition, chronic condition, extremely aligned. And I'm saying all of this because KBF has been, a true partner to us because we knew that they liked innovation, they supported innovation, and they allowed us to be flexible from day one, which, for us as, a small foundation that we really wanted to use the philanthropy capital that we have the best way possible has been fundamental. So,
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, KBF.
All right. And maybe one last question. You're all experts in your field, and I'm wondering, since there are a lot of people also tackling different issues here and trying to solve different challenges here, how important is into the investment that you're going to conduct the bottom-up approach? Like when you have companies or non-profits coming towards you and coming to see you to ask for money or investments, like what's the space you leave them in your investment thesis?
I think in Raise Sherpa, in my foundation, we apply venture philanthropy and trust-based philanthropy approach. So it's really to see our NGOs and our startups as partners, So we have really a long-term approach, and we are aligned with the mission, with the objectives. So this is quite important for us, We don't see each other like just a funding project, It's really to create something together, and I think it's really, this link is the most important,
Well, I think it's time for questions from the audience.
A question I would have on behalf of the room is for a philanthropist trying to step into a blended finance opportunity. Do you feel it's already easy enough to come in opportunities where you can blend your finance with like-minded investors across the impact investing sphere? Or could it become easier, and if so, how?
It's not easy. Honestly, it's not easy. It's early days, so it's not mainstream. We expected much more from blended finance 5, 6, 7 years ago. We thought it would scale everything and would be the silver bullet. It's not yet there. At the same time, there are a couple of great success stories where we could clearly see that the combination of this initial risk capital truly scaled its impact through investors. And you mentioned something very important. It's the alignment of the LPs. It's the alignment of the investors and the impact thesis, as I said, that holds them together. There is a great example, Wouter is here in the room, of Campani, where we advanced very much into this space and which is now scaling with money from all over the world. So it works, it's beyond the anecdotal, it is moving, but not yet mainstream.
I just want to say as well that there is still a lot of cultural barriers because we don't speak the same languages among philanthropists, impact investors, and mainstream finance. And this is something that takes time because we need trust. And trust, we need years for that. So.
Christophe Leclerc from Europe Media Lab. I'm myself a venture philanthropist and an impact investor. In a new segment, some of you talked about democracy, infrastructure, information, etc. Since 1 year, there are efforts to create startups competing with the GAFAMs, with the big social media giants. There are 60 such startups. They were gathered by an association called Rebuild in Copenhagen. I don't credit for that. And we are developing a scheme in order to assess the most promising one. We think there are at least 6, maybe 12. My question to you is, which would be the right avenue, not to fund us, but to fund them? Where should they go, these startups, in the field of social media, in order to scale up?
I think it sort of depends on the return expectation, right? So are they aiming to like displace the social media giants in Europe, like to a large degree?
Yes, displacing.
Yeah.
In the case of TikTok, Facebook, etc., it's playing a role on a small segment of the market which is interested in trusted content, and the advertisers are interested in that. Maybe it's 10% of the market.
Yeah, look, I would say there are like multiple billion-dollar companies built in trust and verification, right, across industries. Social media being one of them. Like, if this company thinks it can do 100 million in revenue from its like potential market in the next like 5 to 7 years, then that's a potentially venture-funded company. What I would say, it's a super interesting mission, right? Like, how do we maintain control of our own data? And how do we make sure we're not just trying to keep our eyeballs glued for the next advertiser or potentially government who is pretending to be an advertiser to show you a short video? So yeah, I think I love it. And I think that there will probably be a lot of philanthropists that want to help fund those projects in the beginning, right? So I would say, like, yeah, find some a lot of the technologists around Europe would be very keen to potentially help that company. And that could look in different ways. But honestly, if you can reach 100 million in revenue in 5 to 7 years, that's a venture track. So that is what I would say.
Thank you.
But I'd like to come in as well, because it's not only about finance. In the States, data is owned by the market. We all know that the big companies that are using the data, they're fully commercial and their ethical grounds are very low. In China, the data belongs to the government. We don't want data to belong to a government. We don't want the data, I think, in Europe to belong to the market. We want a hybrid model. So there's gonna be a combination, or there's need to be a combination where first you need regulation as well. So let's not have regulation outside of the window. Regulation should be there. And within this playground of regulation, there's gonna be the need for hybrid financing. We all know the Guardian is still funded by foundations and by commercial money. Pluralis, which I think as well is here in the room, is one of the very nice examples where indeed media can become commercially viable, but also in layered capital. So I hope, and I think that for media, which is super important for a democracy, we're going to have a layered structure within a framework of legal guardrails.
And about regulation, maybe, William, you can add something, but with maybe changing the topic as well. For the panelists to answer questions.
So my question is to any of the 3 women in the panel. It's a question about regulation. My name is Willem Vriesendorp. I'm with Sustainable Public Affairs in Norsken House, Brussels. It is, and it feels sort of weird that we are talking here about impact finance. And that we're demanding ourselves whether that is, what the yield of that is. I think there's a big role for the regulator to try and price that in. To try and internalize environmental externalities. Maybe my question is for Ines, since you're working on a European level. How do you assess the policy agenda in Europe at the moment, and how is that for your members to navigate on? What does that say about investment certainty for people that are looking into what we now call the impact space, but which is really the space that internalizes environmental externalities to the best? So thank you for your comments on that.
So thank you for the question. It's a big question, so I will try to answer as best as I can. But definitely the European Commission now, the focus that they have is resilience and sovereignty, right? So what we are aiming for at Impact Europe is really to embed impact, environmental and social, because social is critical for democracy and for social cohesion, in that innovation. So that's how we will bring all those topics to the policymakers. So that's the angle that we take.
Thank you so much. I am Reza Ngembok. I'm from Paris. I'm the founder of the Ahadi Foundation, aiming to empower women with disabilities in leadership positions. This is a subject that has been overlooked. When I created this project, I thought that we are not going to look for money like any other NGO. We need to do a social impact contract because it's a win-win project. If women with disabilities are empowered, they will be able to invest in their communities. So it's going to be a win-win for government. So we did a pilot program in France and in Africa with 50 women with disabilities from 11 countries in Africa. But now we need to move from the pilot to the definitive program so that we need to build a robust model so we can maybe attract impact investors. Here we are. We need to see how to move forward and to be able to interest impact investors.
So maybe like how to move from the pilot phase to the actual go-to-market phase, and do you play a role into that?
The best
investors
to be able to build so that we can interest impact investor
right.
and to show that the project is socially impactful and economically impactful.
I think we need a meeting to talk about this because it's really difficult to answer like this. But I think in France, we have a lot of accelerators that can help to build this program, this business model, and then to face the VC. And you need to choose the typical VC that wants to invest in this kind of project. For example, in France, we have a lot. It's not traditional VC, but corporate VC, for example, can be interested because it's really a subject also for big companies, all the inclusion and what we can do with the people with disabilities. So I think this kind of VC could be really interested in your model. But we can talk later about this.
Thank you.
Yeah, I also think you should consider foundations because there are like few big foundations in France, especially that are focused on women empowerment, and they have millions of euros. So I think it'll be very interesting and very happy
you
to
have
discuss after.
Sister Fund. It's great.
Okay, thank you so much.
Stichting Doen, that I mentioned already a couple of times, they have a very nice tagline. So they always start to look whether they use a grant, a seed capital or investment capital, and they constantly navigate between those. And their tagline is, invest when possible, use grants when necessary. So don't jump into impact investing because you think there is the money. You should clearly know whether there is a business model that also bakes in your social impact. If that's not possible, you should not go there. So that's the combination you have to pursue.
You can also have a hybrid model with NGO and the profit structure. So I think it can work like this.
Well, I want to thank you very much. That was very inspiring. A lot of innovations and models covered here. So big applause for the speakers. Thank you very much.